Hello again. This is Jim Wake, the photographer. The comments which follow relate to item 6 on this videotape and were made in December 1986. This is the riverfront of Old Crow Village. You can see a float plane arriving. It was operated by Northern Airways of Carcross in the southern Yukon. Trapper Peterson could not get to his winter camp on Old Crow Flats by boat because of unusually low water in the Old Crow River and its tributaries due to lack of rain. He, one of the few white men based on Old Crow, considered it was cheaper to pay half the cost of bringing the plane 800 miles from Carcross and fly his family, dogs, and outfit rather than stay in the village for the winter. Here you see the NC Company barge placed in such a way it could be used as a temporary loading dock. A glimpse of the village from the air, view of some lakes near Peterson's winter camp. Some of Peterson's belongings left on the lake shore where the plane landed. Some more of the many lakes on Old Crow Flats, the eastern slopes of the Old Crow Mountains. The Indian Affairs Department agreed to pay the other half of the cost of hiring this plane in order to send us some sorely needed medicine and to take a load of children to residential school. This is a village from the south. This is the group of children that went away to school on that plane. Here's Johnny Moses waving. He had sent 2. Unfortunately, they both died of meningitis the following year. Some of the children went to the residential school in Dawson, others went to the Indian residential school in Carcross. Would stay there until they were 18 years of age. This small paddle wheel boat and barge were stranded because of low water in the Porcupine River during July 1946, about 40 miles below Old Crow. The operators left this much larger barge below the new Rampart House because it drew too much water. Some of the freight was brought to the village by small boat. The remainder was brought up to the village late in August by this outfit. This barge could carry 65 tons. It was only loaded with 30 tons at this time. This boat had twin motors, twin props. Now the people are unloading it. The young men of the village went on strike for more pay, so the older men and some of the women and girls went to work unloading. Quite a mixture of freight, as you will see. Cases of gasoline in the foreground. There goes 50 of sugar or rice on Mary Paul Ben's shoulder. There's Paul Porcupine, Johnny Moses. Notice the steep bank. Not only tough carrying the goods up to the top of the hill, then they had to carry it right along the bank to Joe Netro's corrugated steel warehouse. The owner of the boat told me they handed out chocolate bars and comic books to children in the various communities they visited. Now you see Neil MacDonald and Julius Kendi handing out the gifts. The RCMP building in the background. Here they are getting ready to unload this Caterpillar tractor, which was brought in for the Northern Commercial Company, primarily for use in hauling firewood from the bush. However, it was also used for other chores, such as putting the boats in the water in the springtime and hauling them out again in the fall. Now there was something wrong with one of the propellers or drive shafts on this boat, so they wanted to pull it out and have a look, see what they could find. This was John Charlie going by to visit his fish net downstream. While they were doing this work, I was standing beside Peter Charlie, who commented, "That's a damn strong dog, isn't it?" The man on the left at the front of this barge was the owner of the barge and boat. Next to him was a tourist, Mr. Sweet from Seattle. The young man folding the blanket was Jack Haven, a fellow tourist. Our supplies had not arrived, so the corporal sent me along as far as Fort Yukon, where I was to hire a boat to take our supplies to Old Crow if they could be found by radio contact at various points along the Yukon River. At this time, I had no thought of the possibility that I would be frozen in on the return trip some 100 miles from home and have to walk through part of these ramparts, which extend from a few miles above the international boundary at New Rampart House to below Old Rampart House, which is in Alaska some 40 miles downstream from the boundary. Trying to lasso a duck. This area looks like a place where we camped on the way home. Notice the flag giving wind direction as we travel through this swift water. We have reached Old Rampart House, and here is an Indian family standing near the grave marker of the Reverend Vincent Sims, one of the first pioneer Anglican missionaries to serve in this area. He died there in 1885. It was said that he died of some simple illness from which he could have recovered had he been able to receive medical attention. This is the community from a high point of land. By strange coincidence, these Indians, seen in the Hudson's Bay Company graveyard, happened to be the same family with which I was able to store the RCMP supplies when we were subsequently frozen in at Old Rampart House. Here is Paul Ben operating his boat on the return trip. A lot had happened in the short while after leaving the larger boat and barge at Fort Yukon. Now we see a passing group of Indians prepared for cold weather and heading for Fort Yukon. Sights like this were not uncommon on the Porcupine River. Our supplies were located by radio contact at Circle City, Alaska on the Yukon River. We went upstream to get them, but then had a race against time as winter was settling in earlier than usual. I'm pumping the barge because it had started to leak badly. Our outdoor kitchen can be seen nearby. An aircraft flew over, but we had no contact and heard no more of it. One of the beautiful sunset scenes observed before we were forced by ice in the river to pull the boat and barge out of the water and store our supplies. We then walked home.